This is Danny Fleckton here for SecondsOut. Delighted to be joined once again by my good friend and top promoter, Dmitry Salita. Dmitry, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Good to be on.
Glad to have you. Crazy times in boxing at the moment. Coming off a weekend where an MMA fighter in his first professional boxing match has managed to push the reigning world heavyweight champion all the way. In fact, many observers felt he did enough to win the fight, Francis Ngannou against Tyson Fury. Did you watch it? And first of all, how did you score it?
I did watch it. I did not think that he did enough to win. I thought he put on a great effort and did a great job. But I did not think he won. So and I hear a lot of chatter on the internet and on different blogs and podcasts about Ngannou and about Tyson Fury. So let me tell you, from a boxing point of view, it's very difficult to box a strong fighter that knows how to fight and is physically very strong, because he's awkward, he's strong, he's a big puncher, he's used to fighting, and his boxing technique is very unusual. We saw Summit versus McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, and McGregor gave Floyd some trouble because he was so awkward and so unusual. So, I keep reading a lot of these different things, talking down on Tyson. I don't know if I'll take it so far. I think that Ngannou showed that he's a world class fighter. I've always, from the beginning of this fight, I thought this was great for the sport of boxing, and for its growth. And certainly, what an event they put on over there in Saudi Arabia. It was really incredible, and I think great for the sport of boxing, particularly now, during this changing time of broadcasters, where some are getting in and some are getting out. And during this changing phase, it's very important for the sport to show there's global interest in it. So I thought that it was good. And I think Tyson Fury, he did struggle, but his fight with Usyk is still very interesting to me. And to me, it doesn't take away from that in any way.
So your opinion of the Usyk fight, or the way you see it going in your mind, that hasn't changed at all based on that performance by Fury.
It has not. I believe that Tyson is going to prepare himself mentally. He's going to be in a different state. He's going to come to fight, and it's going to be a great fight. And the odds for that fight, uh, in my mind, did not really change. But Ngannou, on the other hand, showed that he's able to compete with the best in the world. He's a big, strong guy. One of the things that surprised me is that he was able to take Tyson Fury's power. He was able to handle his size and his strength and his punching power, and fought back very courageously and really in a great way. So I do think that Ngannou has established himself as a formidable heavyweight, and it'll be very interesting to see him fight going forward with other big names in the division, like Anthony Joshua, uh, maybe even Deontay Wilder, and all the other guys.
And do you
Great for
think
the great for the sorry, great for the sport of for the combat world sports, and certainly great for the sport of boxing.
yeah, I mean, do you think if he ends up fighting a Wilder or a Joshua, they'll benefit in a sense because now we all know how good Francis Ngannou could be, whereas Tyson Fury perhaps didn't?
I believe those promotions are going to be huge. I got to tell you, growing up in amateur boxing, that's why amateur boxing experience is so important. There were a lot of guys, or there were some guys that were not very good boxers, but they were physically so strong they were able to win a lot of big tournaments and beat a lot of very good fighters. Because awkwardness and strength, when they're combined together, awkwardness, strength, and the will to win, when combined together, gives boxers a very tough time. And Tyson Fury is a pure boxer, and Ngannou is a great fighter. And I always thought this was going to be a great event, that it was going to be a great fight, and I think it's great for boxing and great for the world of combat sports that an MMA UFC fighter can come up uh, and do boxing, and it's really incredible. I do not think that this hurt boxing in any way. I think it was great for the sport. Again, it was a great event, and this is kind of like the way the sport world, the way combat sports is presented now. Ever since McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather has really changed the landscape, and there's been some infusion of influencer boxing with that, but it really shouldn't be called that. It's influencer fighting, It's not boxing. It's much different than guys like McGregor, who are world-class fighters in the UFC and the MMA, and guys like Francis Ngannou, who are world-class fighters, and they want to try themselves out in the sport of boxing, which is a different combat sport. And those guys know how to train, they know how to fight, they're in good shape, they know how to take a punch. So it's much different than other forms of fighting that we have seen.
If we look at Mayweather McGregor as an example, Floyd did, and past his prime, Floyd, if we're being honest, did what he was kind of expected to do. You know,
Right.
he took some rounds, he got rid of him in the end. And that kind of sent the message: stay in your lane. You know, you're great at MMA, you're great at boxing. The boxer won because it was in boxing, and I think everyone expects Francis Ngannou would destroy Tyson Fury in a cage under MMA rules. But what message does this send that an MMA fighter can compete on almost equal terms with
Well,
a
I got to
boxer?
say, well, one of the things about Ngannou and McGregor is that they were strikers.
Mm,
And with all due respect, McGregor was also past his prime when he fought Mayweather, just in
sure.
terms of his UFC career. So uh, it shows that the UFC guys, selected guys, know how to fight, and that we can have some mega events down the line. That's what it showed to me. And it's not the first. I mean, Muhammad Ali, for the Japanese fighter, I believe it was to a draw in Japan in the
Yeah.
70s when he was around his peak. So, uh, they say nothing new happens under the sun. I don't think anything new happened. I think that Francis Ngannou established himself as a great fighter, as a real fighter. Not only it'll be, now that he's with the PFL, um, it's great for the PFL.
Yeah.
I think it's great for the combat world, for the world of combat sports. I think it's fantastic, and it's just very interesting and adds another layer of heavyweight fighting to the sport.
Now, you referred to kind of influencer fighting, as you termed it earlier on. We were doing our live show, our live stream, SO Live, earlier today. And one of the viewers made the point that with Tyson struggling against Francis Ngannou, coming hot on the heels of his brother Tommy struggling equally against KSI, who's got very limited boxing background at this point, does it make it seem like boxing's almost too accessible, too achievable? You know, will the man on the street start to think they can beat the best fighters?
Right. So back in the 90s, there used to be the Tough Man contest, which was very
Mm,
popular, and those that follow boxing for a long time remember a figure whose name
possibly.
was Bud,
Yeah.
who was a very successful and very interesting guy to watch, and was the king of the four rounders. So and Bob Arum, being in his peak as a promoter back in those days, saw kind of that niche and that interest, and to a very small extent, those things are interesting. So Jake Paul, who is, I would call him an influencer boxer because he's really trying boxing. He's doing real training camps. He has real trainers. He's really trying to get better. However, everybody else, I would say, maybe there's one or two other guys that are giving it a try, but not many. They barely know how to stand. They don't train. They don't respect the sport of boxing as it should be reported. So as it should be respected. So it's influence of fighting. It's not influence of boxing. And many of these guys wouldn't win basic amateur tournaments in very limited cities and very limited states in the United States. So, and I think it dilutes the honor and the great sport of boxing at its highest level. So I respect guys like Jake Paul who are really giving it a good try and who, again, do real training camps and hire real trainers and get real sparring partners and really pay the price of what it is to be a fighter. But all the other stuff is just a sideshow. And me, as a boxing purist, I love the sport of boxing. And that's the reason why I'm in the business of boxing, because I love the sport so much. I'm not a fan of it being publicized as boxing. It's fighting, and maybe it's a good business, and people want to come and see it. Uh, but but I don't think that translates back to them being boxing fans and following the sport of boxing. And I gotta say, one of the reasons why it has grown to such an extent over the last several years is because now Showtime is leaving the sport of boxing. HBO has been gone for some years, and if I think if you see the correlation between HBO being gone and and influencer boxing growing, you'll see that them going away and the trend of influencer boxing kind of came across at the same time, because HBO was a great storyteller. Real fighters were influencers. They were celebrities. You know, people that lead a normal life, you know, don't really box for a living. Boxing is a tough sport, and all of them have great stories and that many can relate to, and they, you know, come from different communities, different backgrounds, had different challenges to be as great as they turn out to be. So, and HBO, you know, from business, from their business core of their business to the broadcasters that talked about the sport of boxing, really were able to bring out the message and get the fans interested. You know, Jim Lampley just did a bit of a stint for Canelo's fight, which was on Showtime pay-per-view, and it was so great to see him back. And he talked about what a great fight Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward was, and the way he spoke about it, the nuances and the details and the soul of the sport that he understood and that he's able to relate to the fans is priceless. And those are the people, that is the professionalism and the responsibility that made the sport of boxing grow. And you know, now we're kind of in a place where that hole has not been filled yet, and there's a great potential for it to be filled, but it's not filled yet. And that's the reason why you see guys that I've never heard of before. They go on social media and they talk about their fights and they make fun of it and they make fun of boxing, and they don't even know how to stand. They don't even know how to jab. They know how to throw a right hand. And I'm saying, like, you know, I respect anyone who gets into the ring, but it's not boxing. It's fighting, and the sport of boxing, the sweet science, is a great sport. World championship fighters that fight each other, that fight at a high level. There's nothing like it. There's no spectacle like it, and I believe that there's great potential for it to come back, you know, better than bigger than ever, because we have something to look forward to. We have something to learn from, but I do believe that as a sport, we're in a bit of a challenging phase with Showtime getting out of boxing here in the United States. So yeah, I think there may be a bit of a recession, but hopefully the right people see the opportunity and put it all together and make boxing great again.
And we'll talk about Showtime momentarily, but just on the note, you said you're a boxing purist. I like to think I am also. How do we, as boxing purists, explain to our non-purist friends someone like a KSI pushing a professional fighter in Tommy Fury all the way, or even Ngannou pushing Tyson Fury all the way?
Well, these are two different. Tommy Fury uh, has a great name, comes from a great family, is a nice guy. I've met him, you know, myself, and I like him. But he is limited as a fighter, and he's making the most of what he got. So Tyson Fury versus KSI, you know, to me is as far as it goes. But then there's the undercard of all the other guys that I've never heard of before, and many of them don't know what the hell they're doing, honestly, like from a boxing point of view. So KSI and Tyson Fury is a nice addition when there's lots of championship boxing going on, either on a card or it's a standalone fight. It's a nice addition to draw attention to the sport of boxing as something that's interesting, that's out of the box, that happens once in a while. But it's not. But to me, influencer fighting is not influencer boxing. It's not a sport. There is no amateur boxing program. There is no way to get into the initiation. Is if you have, you know, 1 million followers on Instagram, then you become an influencer boxer. But that's not, you know. But that's not. And if you talk a little bit of trash, then you're, you know, then you got the resume to step into the ring. But that's not how it should be. I don't think that it makes the sport grow. I think that besides it being, you know, a very short-term business venture, I don't see it helping the sport of boxing grow. Adding to it and adding significance and you know, and when this interview comes out, I would like to see what the boxing fans think about it and comment on what I just said.
I'm sure they won't be shy in coming forward with their opinions. They're not
And I
normally.
want to say, and the great thing about the sport of boxing in the UK is that, and it's quite interesting actually, because I think boxing in this day and age is strongest in the UK, just in terms of fans being involved and loving the sport and loving it passionately, and really knowing the sport of boxing. But at the same time, some of the influencer fights, besides Jake Paul, are most significant in the UK. So it's very interesting. I wonder if those fans that come see those fights also watch boxing. So you guys can comment on this as well. I'm talking about the boxing fans. Comment on that as well. I wonder if the boxing fans are interested in the influencer fights. Jake Paul or Logan Paul versus KSI versus Fury. That's like, that's close to the real thing, so to say. I mean, it's
gray
fun.
area.
But, yeah, the gray area, right? But then there's like 10 or 12 other guys that I've never heard of before that go on social media and make fun of their own fights, and that's like, to me, it's disrespecting. It's a level of disrespect to all the young kids who are now grown men who spend days in and days out making weight, and learning how to jab, and learning how to throw a right hand, and getting bruised up, and they make, whatever, let's say $1,000 a fight, and these guys make millions of dollars. So, yeah. So I think that we need to, from my point of view, we need to figure out a way to strengthen the core of the sport of boxing and to be able to tell the stories and to make it popular and to make real fighters influencers. And I believe that once that happens, it can happen in a very short period of time. The sport will grow, bigger and better than ever.
Now, you worked with Showtime recently and successfully, and they seemed on the surface to be doing pretty well. But why, in your view, have the network decided boxing is no longer worthy of its investment going forward?
Yeah, we worked with Showtime quite extensively. Jarrell Miller, Clarissa Shields, Shoja Gashev, who's now fighting for the world title, Vladimir Shishkin, and so many other fighters that developed on the Showtime platform. So I'm very grateful for what they did to the sport of boxing and what they did for my fighters. They have the Showbox series, which was really the only show platform in the sport of boxing in the United States where, based on talent, you can get an event. Now, those possibilities are not available. All the network deals are exclusive. So ESPN is exclusive to Top Rank, The Zone is exclusive to Eddie and Matchroom. Although there's always conversations about expanding, but not really yet. I mean, we had a show on The Zone June 3rd, but it's not really. There is no system where a promoter can come present a show and get some dates. Sure. So that's a big hit for the sport of boxing, and I think for the sport of boxing in the United States, and obviously Showtime is one of the bigger brands, one of the bigger networks, significantly added to the popularity of boxing. They told stories well. They have social media presence, a television presence. Yeah, I think that boxing may go into recession for a little bit, but there will be great opportunity, and I do think, as it always does, boxing, adjusts and comes back to norm. I'm hoping bigger and better than ever.
Why do you feel Showtime have made the decision they have, though? What is it that's caused them to put their money and their investment in other areas?
Well, Showtime is the channel got purchased by a different company, and people in charge seem to not really, have a liking for the sport of boxing. Okay. Bob Arum, kind of called it some years ago when HBO got out of boxing. So maybe he foresaw it, maybe just kind of things fell into place. But Showtime is a movie network. It's not really a sports network, and doesn't have any sports besides boxing. I guess it was a natural for them to get out. But, I visited the Showtime building many, many times in New York City, and there's a whole floor that's dedicated to boxing. You walk into the building and, you see old Mike Tyson posters, Manny Pacquiao versus Mayweather, Julio Cesar Chavez, and, just so much boxing. And the fact that this staple of the boxing community is going out of business is very sad. And I do think that, Stephen Espinoza and Gordon Hall have done a good job for the sport of boxing with whatever they could do. Boxing will live to see another day, but it is very sad that this giant for the sport is leaving us.
And just finally, there's been a lot of talk since Showtime announced their decision about the future for PBC, the Al Heyman-backed organisation that worked predominantly with Showtime over the last few years. Where do you see them ending up as a stable? Which broadcaster?
Well, there's rumors of them doing stuff with Amazon Prime. There's been some rumors of them doing stuff with the Zone. So we don't know. Hopefully, a new broadcaster comes into the platform and engages boxing in a real way. And competition is always good for the sport of boxing. Competition brings forth good fights. Every broadcaster wants to deliver the best. So I'm hoping that something new and exciting pops onto the scene. The other thing that I want to say is that the fact that Showtime and HBO is out of boxing, in this way, and it's a surprise, should send a message to the business establishment of the sport of boxing, and in the last decade, I would say in the last 10 years, the growth of boxing has the people in power have not invested in the growth of boxing in the United States. And that goes from the amateur boxing programs to the professional boxing to the glory of the sport of boxing. When I was a kid at Star City Boxing Club, I used to rush home to watch boxing on HBO. I was so excited to see the fights, to listen to the music, to listen to the broadcasts. It was so exciting. But and there was a certain glory to it. Unfortunately, that has dwindled over some years. And I believe that the word exclusive, I don't like the word exclusive, because the word exclusive means that certain fighters can fight other fighters, that certain people, certain promoters and managers don't work with other promoters and managers. That's not good for the sport. That's not good for its growth. So the sport has to be inclusive. And while, on social media, it's kind of fun sometimes when you see different promoters, beef with other promoters and people in the business. But a lot of times that precludes them from making fights, and that boxing's careers are finite. So when the best fights can't be made, that hurts the fan base, because they can't see the fighters that they want in divisions fight each other, and it hurts the sport and it hurts the broadcasters. So the one thing about Don King and Bob Arum, even though they had their beef throughout the decades, they always found a way to make fights. And we as a boxing community have to be more inclusive and have to find a way to make fights, have to find a way to make the best fights for the broadcast and for the boxing fans and for the fighters, so they can benefit most out of their finite careers, and competition makes the sport grow. I will use it as a small example. When I signed Clarissa Shields, women's boxing was still developing. She's the first woman ever to be the main event on premium cable network television here in the United States, which was on Showtime. So we knew that working together with Mark Taffet, who was Clarissa's manager, we knew that we had to make the biggest and the best fights for the sport to grow, for Clarissa to grow, for women's boxing to create an aura of competitiveness, of interest. So Clarissa fought for first world title against Nikki Adler in a fourth professional fight. And then we found her arch rival, which was Christina Hammer, who was a long-time middleweight world champion. And, we did everything we could to promote that fight and to build towards it. And then you've seen so many fights of Clarissa that have really broken the glass ceilings that the sport of women's boxing has had. And no matter if if the other fighter was with a different promoter, if you had to overpay, you had to do what you had to do, put a fighter on the card, whatever you had to do to make the fights happen. And that's what we did. And, Clarissa now is a bona fide superstar in the sport. So that's a small example of what, of what needs to be done to make the big fights happen.
Great stuff. Dmitry, always an insight to speak to you. And let's do it again soon. And hopefully, we'll see if Tyson Fury and Usyk ends up happening next month.
Thank you. And
in December. It's not quite November yet.
And I look forward to, we talked about some sensitive issues. I look forward to seeing how the boxing fans that watch the channel react to it.
Me too. All right. Thanks,
Dmitry. All I say is keep it clean, guys.
Yeah. You can hope. Thanks,
yes.
Dmitry.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.